Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and I'm here today to kick off a new vlog reading urban horror for Realmathon. March means Realmathon, and this is the fantastic readathon hosted by Cassidy at Covers with Cassidy for the full month. It's a lot of fun and you can pretty much read whatever you want, but there is a bonus points prompt to read a urban setting, and I decided that this is the perfect time to pick up some of my urban set books during the month. So for this week, post vacation, I just got back, so I am looking to ease back into the vlogging at home and the reading with a few urban horror books. And I'm really excited for the TBR I've put together. There's a slight chance I might add something in, but I think I'm pretty set on 4 books that I really have been wanting to get to. To start with, I have one that I don't own physically, but I have it out from the library, and that is The Rust Maidens by Gwendolyn Kist. I read Gwendolyn Kist's The Haunting of Velkwood, her more recent book, very recently, and it wound up being a really big hit for me last year, one of my favorite horrors, and I really enjoyed the haunting atmosphere of it. This book is one of her very early works, and it is set in Cleveland, Ohio, in kind of a dying urban setting, in the sense that this is a neighborhood that is run down, and there's something happening to the young women of this neighborhood where they are literally rusting. And we don't know exactly what is causing it. They don't know exactly what is causing it from what I understand from the story, but this is a book that I put onto my horror bingo board for pink horror, and I think it's delving into women's issues, and it feels very appropriate since this weekend we are also celebrating National Women's Day. Beyond that, I have a few more books to add. I have a novella, The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. This is an author I know I've really enjoyed in the past. It's a nice short read, and that's really what I need since this vlog needs to go up in less than a week. And I don't know a lot about this one, but it says people move to New York looking for magic and nothing will convince them it isn't there. We're following a man named Charles who is hustling to put food on the table to keep his family fed and under a roof. And it is set in New York, so very much a urban setting. And there is a curse written on his skin. He's delivering an occult book to a reclusive sorceress in Queens, and he's opening a door to a deeper realm of magic and earning the tension of things best left sleeping. So I don't know a lot about this one, but this is an author that I know can do great things, and I look forward to finding out what's going on in this one. Another author I've enjoyed in the past that I've been wanting to revisit is Craig DeLuey, and I have picked up Suffer the Children. I'm not sure what city this is set in, but it was labeled as urban on many lists I look at, and it's a book that I've had sitting around waiting to get to it for quite a while. This one sounds like it will be a little bit heavy hitting because the issue in this one is that all the children in the world are dying. They just all drop in a wave going around the world, and then something happens where they return. And I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that, but I'm super intrigued. And then last but not least, I have another New York set book, and that is The Dead Take the A Train by Cassandra Claw and Richard Kadri. And I have read Cassandra Claw in the past, and this is one that had me intrigued to pick it back up. For one thing, that cover just draws the eye. And this is a book I also have on audio thanks to Macmillan Audio. This says Julie is a coked up, burnt out 30-year-old whose only retirement plan is dying early. She's been trying to establish herself in the New York City magic scene, and she'll work the most gruesome gigs, exorcise the nastiest demons, and make deals with the cruelest gods to claw her way to the top. Again, I'm not quite sure what this is going to be about, but I am intrigued. So, this week is about getting back to work, which I'm sure will be busy since I've been out for a week and things have been piling up. I know I have a couple meetings, so thankfully I have most, if not all, of these books on audio, so I can hopefully get to some of them this weekend, hopefully finish the rest of them up as I go into my work week with some audio booking during my commute. These are all books I'm excited for, so I will be back very shortly with some initial thoughts. It is Saturday afternoon, I think. Currently I'm a little lost on time. Just got back from vacation yesterday, so I am ready to dive in to my first of my horror reading books for the week for Realmathon. And given that today is International Women's Day, I thought going with a female author would be a great place to start. So I have now started The Rust Maidens by Gwendolyn Kist, and so far I am enjoying this. It's not quite hooking me the same way that The Haunting of Velkwood did by the same author, and this is, I think, her debut novel. I think she had some short stories before this, but I think this was the first novel she put out. And so I can kind of feel like maybe that could be partly why. There are some similarities, I would say, between the books. So, what this book is about. This is set in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's set in a neighborhood that's kind of running down. This neighborhood is pretty much supported by the factories, and these factories are going through a lot of struggles. There's talk about strikes, which has everyone on edge. There is a lot of things shutting down. There's some environmental impacts going on, and this neighborhood is dying off. Families are leaving, and it's just a kind of scary time. This is set in this timeline in 1980s, and our main character Phoebe has just graduated high school along with her best friend Jacqueline. Phoebe is dreaming of getting away, and when we get to the present timeline, or more present timeline, we learn that she's been gone for ages, and there's something just haunting about this neighborhood. She's returning to this neighborhood. Her father has become ill. I think he's been moved to like an institutional home type of thing, and there's reference to the fact that her father doesn't know her when she tried to call and things like that. So there's dementia, I think, going on there. It's not 100% clear, but I think that's the gist of it. And she's come home to help her mother kind of close down the house. The house is one of the last ones occupied in this region. There's an investment firm, construction firm that has bought up the land. They're going to demolish everything, and Phoebe's there to help her mother. Phoebe has a lot of hurt feelings about this home, and that's where I think it's giving me some of the same feelings as The Haunting of Velkwood did, in the idea that this is kind of a neighborhood that is into itself haunted by memories, by whatever it may be. And there are a lot of things about what happened in the 1980s that we're uncovering. From the synopsis, we do know more than the text has told us at this point, but something started happening to the young women of this neighborhood where they start rusting. And it's a disease, it's a phenomenon, nobody really knows. Everyone's intrigued by this concept, and somehow Phoebe has escaped this, but it sounds like most of the girls around her have not. And we're getting into a little bit about her relationships with these other women, positive and negative, about the neighborhood as it once was, and how it was starting to break down at that point in time. And I think that's going to tie into the present timeline as well. As I'm getting further into the story, I am liking it more. It was a little bit slow to engage in the beginning. I feel like I didn't necessarily get hooked into Phoebe's character to start off with, but I think the neighborhood, the environment is really well set up. It is very atmospheric and haunting in and of itself, and it certainly works for the idea of an urban horror. I'm getting those vibes from it for sure. So I'm going to keep reading, and I will be back when I have another update. It's now Sunday morning. I've got my Carrion City mug of coffee, and I am planning to settle in for a little bit of crocheting. I am trying to catch up with where I was before my vacation. I think I have 4 of these squares done for week 3 of my crochet along. If you haven't been following my crochet along journey, I started it in my hearts vlog, and I continued it in one of the other vlogs, which is escaping me at the moment, but I made it about 2/3 maybe of the way through, or maybe a little more than half at least of where I needed to be for week 3 before I got really busy with packing and vacation and all of that. So that's where I'm at with this. I need to play some catch up because the people who are on the ball and fully keeping up with the crochet along are working on week 5. So I do have some catch up to do for that. I don't think I will catch up, but I will finish the blanket. It feels appropriate for a horror vlog because it feels a bit like a Frankenstein project. We have all these different pieces and in the end we have to sew them all together. I don't have a lot of confidence in my tension and honestly in the pattern a little bit, but so far I'm trusting the process. We'll see how it goes. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about running out of yarn, and I am concerned about that a little bit because some of my pieces are coming out a little bit bigger than the pattern said. So if I have to order some more yarn, that'll slow me down a little bit more, but that's okay. We're doing our first crochet along and we'll see how it winds up. So I'm gonna keep going with that. Miss Kylie. Kylie's getting some energy back from where she was yesterday. Yesterday, she was very much about hanging out with me and sitting in my lap. Kylie. Today, she wants to play, so I apologize for the background squeaks. I do have a live show this afternoon for Valor because of the time change. It's not until 1 o'clock my time. Usually those shows are at 12 o'clock my time, but the UK hasn't done a time change and we have. So that will be happening later on this afternoon for me. So I have some time to do some reading and some crocheting before that hits. Okay, I just went and switched Kylie's toy for her treat. So hopefully we can have some peace and quiet and I will update you on the Rust Maidens because I did finish this up last night as I was doing some laundry, listening on the audiobook, which I think worked better for me in this case. The physical wasn't fully hooking me, and I think that's a lot because I'm kind of tired, post-vacation, a little fuzzy in the head, but that's okay. So I wound up thinking that this was really well done. It was very much a discussion piece in a lot of ways. I think this would be a fantastic one for a book club, for a women's book club, because it does talk a lot about women and how they are treated in society. We have this group of girls who are rusting away and their families don't know what to do with them. They don't know how to handle them. They consider them monstrous. They consider them something to be locked away or something to be done away with. It's a very sad situation. Our main character, Phoebe, she really loves her best friend and her best friend is among these women. And even though she has left and tried to forget a lot of this stuff, it really has haunted her. There's a lot of grief here, in addition to the fact that she's grieving this father who she left behind and who has been not in the best space. And the way this whole town really is grieving itself. There's, plant closures going on. There's just this lack of ability to care for oneself. And there's just a lot of things to pick apart in here. And I think that the atmosphere and the grief and the feelings were all really well done. I didn't necessarily always find it the most engaging, like I said, but once I got into it, I was really invested to find out what was going to happen to these women, what Phoebe's role was going to be in the whole grand scheme of things. And overall, I did enjoy myself in the reading of this. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and continue on. I have started Suffer the Children by Craig DeLuey. Actually, I did bring it down with me. I have not made it to the halfway point, so I'm going to keep reading a little bit, but I'll give you my initial thoughts now, actually, because there has been a rather significant shift in the story. I hadn't read the synopsis in this since I bought it, which was quite a while back. This is an author I've been wanting to try again, so I had picked it up, I think, on a Barnes & Noble run at some point because it sounded interesting. And it is another really grief-heavy book because the premise of this one is that one day all the children in the world start dying, and it's a phenomenon. It goes all the way around the world and no one is spared. And then what has just happened in the book, and it is in the synopsis, so I don't feel like it's a spoiler, but 3 days later they come back, and this has been this huge thing. I don't know what the impact is going to be. They've not been able to keep up with burying all of these children. We've got parents who have taken their lives because they can't handle the fact that their children just suddenly drop dead. And we've got mass graves and atrocities like that as well. And how does that pair up with these children suddenly rising from the dead? And I'm so intrigued to find out where this is going. It definitely has me hooked. I wouldn't say it's necessarily getting too deep into the feelings. Like, I'm not necessarily feeling fully the grief like I would maybe in a different type of book on this type of subject, but I can absolutely feel for the characters. We're following a group of different parents. We've got a woman who has been running a daycare and had her own 2 children, and then a couple others she was taking care of. We have the mother of one of the clients from that daycare. Her son has always had health issues, and she's had to be this really fierce advocate for him with his limitations in his diet and things like that. We're following the husband of the woman who ran the daycare, and he was the one with the children at the time that this whole phenomenon struck his family, and the way their marriage is being impacted, the way his own feelings about fatherhood are being impacted. And we're following a pediatrician who, of course, has kind of changed course when there's no children in the world to not be able to be a doctor to children anymore, and how he's been involved in the kind of hunt for what happened and is there a future to humanity with all children being killed. So it's an interesting premise, and definitely one to be wary of. Obviously, there's a lot of trigger warnings in here. Certainly death of a child, certainly some very gory kind of issues. We've been joined by a Kylie. I don't think she's in frame, but say hi, buddy. Yeah. And suicide and depression and all sorts of trauma on the trigger warning side. So I think a little bit past the 1/3 mark. So this is what I'm going to be continuing. I do have the audiobook for this one out from the library, so I can continue on while I do some crocheting and apparently have a puppy in my lap. So I will give you an update later on. We'll see if I finish it before or after the live show, but that is the plan for this morning. It's Sunday evening. I'm about to go make dinner. Did the live show for Valor, which was a lot of fun, aside from the fact that 3 minutes into the live show, there was an earthquake in California. It was a 4.4, not huge and not super close to my house, but I was in the middle of trying to give my thoughts on Valor and the house started shaking. So I had to kind of quickly pass that off. And that made for an interesting start. But it was a really interesting discussion. I had a lot of fun. 2-hour-long live show. And I will have that linked down below, just in case you have read Valor and would like to check it out. But anyway, back to the whole point of this particular vlog, which is reading horror. So I finished up Suffer the Children, and I thought this was an interesting take on kind of the whole zombie concept, because of course we have these children coming back to life after they have been very definitely dead. And I don't want to talk too much about what twist the author brings to that, but I thought it was a really interesting take on that. And I always love finding kind of a familiar feeling mythology, for lack of a better term, but with an interesting twist. And I thought that was done well here. There are a lot of discussion points in here on what it means to be a parent, what it means to lose a child, what it means to sacrifice for your children, and what limits you might put on that ability to sacrifice to give your children what they need. And I really liked the mix of POVs we got in here. I thought it was a really good kind of selection of characters in terms of who we were hearing from, their relation to parenthood, the husband and wife that we get in here, the husband being the pediatrician, the wife being his nurse. They've lost a child in their past. They don't actively have any children during the course of this story, so they have their own unique perspective on things. and then we have a single mother, we have a couple with children, and just the way this is working in this particular world. I wouldn't say this is a scary book by any means. I didn't feel particularly like that was really what it was going for. It was more about the horrific circumstances, the horrific place these parents and these adults in general are put into as a result of this phenomenon that has taken out all of the children and brought them back. And I thought it just really was a really well done story in general. It kept me very hooked. It kept me very interested. And I was eager to get back into it after the live show today to find out the final resolution. And I do think I like how it resolved in here. It doesn't tie everything up in a neat bow. It certainly doesn't have a happy ending for everyone. I do want to add two trigger warnings. There is violence against an animal. There's a dog in the book, and dogs in horror don't tend to have the best outcomes. So just forewarned on that. But overall, I really like this one. I'm giving it 4 stars. And I think next I'm going to pick up The Dead Take the A Train and go for the next big book that I have. And then I'll just have the novella as I get further into the week where I've got work and stuff to juggle. And I'm excited to go ahead and continue on. This has been going pretty well so far, and I am eager to keep reading. It's now Sunday evening, and I unfortunately have to start winding down because I do have work tomorrow. Sunday scaries after vacation are definitely the worst, but I have a couple updates before I go to bed. First off, on a non-horror note, I did finish my final squares for week 3 of my crochet along and attached them and added a couple granny rows to them. So I'm excited that this part is done. So I'm moving on to week 4, which is doing a new type of stitch that I haven't done before, a cluster stitch. And that is something that I'm going to need to learn because I get in a new rhythm and a new pattern for stitches, but I'm excited to give that a try. I have been setting myself up to start it this evening, and I don't think I'm going to get far enough to actually start the cluster stitches. That can be a tomorrow problem, but that's okay. And while I was doing my final stitches on this section, I did make a good dent in The Dead Take the A Train like I planned. This one I am about, I would say about 140 pages in. I'm about 40% of the way through this one. So we're following 2 different POVs in this book. Julie is someone who is taking whatever jobs she can get in this magical world. She's doing the dangerous jobs, she's doing the messy jobs. As the book opens, she is confronting a demon who is inhabiting the body of a bride. It jumps you kind of right into the action. It took me a little bit to kind of figure out what was going on, but there's some weird stuff about that. It's bloody, it's gory, it's messy. Julie is a druggie to some extent, although she seems to have that under control. She's definitely destitute. She doesn't have money. She's struggling to make her rent, and she thankfully has a very nice landlord who is letting her get away with this. She has a lot of friends in this kind of supernatural underground type of world, and some not so much friends. Julie also has a visitor show up at her door. Sara is a good friend of hers, someone she hasn't seen in a while, someone she has a crush on, and there seems to be something going on with Sara. Julie's picking up on it, and it's definitely being made clear to the reader that there's something about Sara's relationship with her boyfriend, husband, not sure, that is less than ideal. There's some toxicity there, and Sara needs an out, and she's coming to Julie for help. Julie's, of course, prioritizing taking care of Sara, who she really likes, both as a friend and potentially something more, and making sure she's safe. The other, I'd say, secondary POV we're getting in here is Tyler. And Tyler is Julie's ex. And he's not a great guy. He's definitely a slimy individual. He works for this corporation and it's not a great place to work. He's given an assignment that basically is a death sentence for him, and he signed a contract that means he has to do it. Well, he turns around and hires his ex Julie, who he still hires to do jobs, and convinces her to take on this deadly assignment. And there's a messy dynamic going on there as well. We're also getting a little bit of the POV of Sarah's significant other, and he also not a great guy. So there's a lot of messy character dynamics in here. I really like Julie a lot, and she's messy. There's definitely some gray morality potentially going on in here, but I'm actually really enjoying this a lot more than I kind of expected going into it. And I don't know really what's hooking me in quite as much. It's great to listen to on audio. Like I said, I have the gifted copy of the audiobook from Macmillan Audio, and I've really been enjoying consuming it in that way while I am crocheting. Cassandra Khaw is not an author I've necessarily fallen in love with before, but it's really working for me in here. There's a little bit of humor to it. There's some twists to kind of common concepts. Sara doesn't really have a lot of information or knowledge about this magical world, and so we're kind of seeing some things through her eyes. We're also getting information from Julie, who is fully steeped in this magical world. And I really like kind of getting those two perspectives. Julie sometimes is a little more trusting than maybe she should be, and she maybe could stand to be questioning things a little bit more, but also she seems to have some people around her that really are looking out for her, and I like that aspect as well. So I'm actually having a good time with this one, and I am eager to continue on. And honestly, this cover just keeps drawing the attention, even as I'm listening to it on audio. It just keeps catching my eye. I keep noticing different things, and I just am loving the colors and the creepiness and the weirdness of it. So I'm going to probably wrap things up pretty quickly here and try to maybe watch a little bit of TV and unwind. I did not sleep well at all last night. I was watching TV and I just couldn't kind of get tired, which is maybe because I crashed so early Friday night, and maybe just my brain is just running with too many things that need to be done, and I'm feeling a little bit behind on life. But that's okay. That's kind of normal, I think, after a vacation. I have some catching up on real life to do, but I will keep going with that and deal with life tomorrow, going back to work and the like. So anyway, I'm rambling. So it's time to get my sleepy puppy, who is sleeping behind the camera, off to bed and maybe watch a little bit of Lost and go to sleep. So that's the plan. I'll talk to you again once I have an update on finishing up The Dead Take the A Train. It's now Tuesday morning and we're having a very rare day in Southern California. It is raining a little bit, but it's definitely dark outside, so lighting's even worse than normal. But I do have a couple of updates for you. I wound up sleeping in a little bit today. I did not get to sleep easily last night and did not sleep super well, so I'm going into work just a bit later than normal. But in the meantime, last night I did finish up The Dead Take the A Train, and overall I thought this was a fun world. It left me with a few mixed feelings here and there with things. I think it got a little bit slow in a few places toward the end. Like, I kept expecting the book to be nearly done and it still had a ways to go. And I don't know if that was me just being kind of off my game and a little bit tired still, or if it just maybe could have been trimmed down just a tad. But I did like how things resolved in here. I like the progression. This is the type of book where the author is throwing lots of stuff at you. There are a lot of creatures in this world. Some may be familiar, some may be less familiar, and it doesn't go into a ton of depth about these different creatures. Some you definitely get to know more because there's more engagement. Some are just kind of thrown in along the way. And the world building reader in me a few cases wanted a little bit more explanation or depth, but I think we get enough for what it's trying to accomplish. It's trying to create this really big underground magical world beneath the streets in the back rooms of New York, and I think it's getting accomplished quite well in here. There are a lot of gory moments. There are a lot of kind of over-the-top moments. I wouldn't say this one ever got scary, but I'm a bad judge of that because, I grew up on Stephen King at far too early an age. So it definitely had more tension. It definitely had characters' lives on the line, and definitely some characters you were rooting for to get taken down. So overall, I think this one was a lot of fun, and it does leave me looking forward to reading the new Cassandra Clare book that I did just recently receive. I wound up giving this one 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star new favorite type of read, but overall, I had a good time with this one. And with that one done, I did start The Ballad of Black Tom this morning. I'm about 25% of the way through, and I don't have a ton of thoughts on this one yet. We are following Charles, who is living in New York. He has been tasked with delivering this occult book to someone, and it's potentially dangerous. So what he decides to do is to remove one of the pages. Like, he's not even feeling like he can look at the page to remove it because this book has a lot of danger. But apparently removing one page from it will limit the danger potential. So I'm very intrigued to see what more we get from this story. It's very short. The audiobook's only 3 hours, so I think I will fly through it. I don't want to give a lot of thoughts at this point. I don't have a lot of thoughts at this point just because it is such a short book. So I will check back in once I finish this one to wrap up the vlog. It's now Tuesday evening, and I have now finished The Ballad of Black Tom, and overall I did really enjoy this one, but I had a few mixed feelings on it. I really like Victor Laval's writing. I really like his descriptions, and all of that is definitely true in here as well. I also really appreciate the way he can layer truths and reality and political statements and all of that into his book, even as he is talking about something magical. This is set in New York, and our main character, Charles Thomas, or Black Tom, is someone who is trying to look out for his father. He's trying to make ends meet. And New York is a place where there's magic, and there's also danger in that magic. And his main goal, I think, is a protective goal, at least originally. But he does wind up removing this page from this occult book, and that kicks off a series of events. We have a very sad situation come out of that. I don't really want to give too many details, but we have police who are white who are doing things inappropriately, claiming self-defense in an inappropriate way, and they're kind of putting this blame back on our main character. And there's a lot of reality in this, a lot of sad reality in this, and there's a lot of gruesomeness to some of the things that happen in here as well. So overall, I really did like this. I think it leaves some things at the end open-ended, but there is resolution as well. So overall, this one's a very strong 4-star, I think, for me. It's one that I think I'm going to have to sit on a little bit longer to really finalize my thoughts, but I think that gives the general gist of where my brain is on this one. I will say, just totally as an aside and not a fault of the book, I got really confused listening to this on my way to work this morning because they kept saying Sleeping King, and that's something relevant to the book. But I was reading Stephen King earlier in the week, and my tired brain this morning took a bit to click in that they weren't talking about Stephen King for some really strange reason in some way that didn't make sense in the context of the book. So I felt a little dumb with that. But aside from that, I did think the audiobook was quite well done as well, and overall like this one. So with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap up this vlog here, since I do want to get it up on Saturday and have a busy next couple of days. And then we've got the Gala of Peace for Realmathon happening this coming weekend. So I do want to be prepared and have this scheduled to go up. This reading vlog went really well for me. I'm happy about that. I've had a few vlogs, I feel like, recently where I've had a bunch of kind of mid books or not super exciting books. So the fact that I had several wins in this one makes me feel really good. Let me know in the comments below, do you have any particular urban horror books that you would recommend, or urban fantasy? I am planning to do a urban fantasy vlog later on this month, and I do have, at this point, kind of too many options, but if you have any particular ones you'd like to recommend to me, I'd love to hear it. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, go ahead and give me a train-related emoji for the dead take the A train. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my urban reading, more of my Realmathon participation, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.